Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. I missed you guys. It's been a while. I've been working on stuff in IRL as well as my other channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description below just in case you like guns and you want to check that out. But we are back, and this time we're playing Diablo 4. And hopefully we'll have a few videos like this if you guys enjoy the content. So please let me know down in the comments and come by our Discord and hang out. And we'll see if people enjoy it, then we'll definitely put out some more videos. But today I am bringing you my Speed Infinimist build. And just a few caveats with that before we get started. The first is, of course, that I'm just transitioning from a Bone Spear build to the Infinimist build, the Speed Infinimist, which I'm going to show you today. And for that reason, my gear is not necessarily in the best shape. I don't have the best affixes or the best rolls on the stuff that I have, but it is definitely a very, very good combination so far. Certainly, the survivability is definitely a lot better. And the AoE damage potential is far in excess of what's possible with the Bone Storm, but also the defensiveness is also quite a lot better. The survivability is really up there, and the requirement of specific positioning is also diminished compared to that of Bone Spear, because of course with Bone Spear you need to be in a particular sort of place and you need to CC enemies in a certain way in order to really make the most out of the Bone Spear. But here we're basically just doing a ton of damage over time with Shadow. Some of our abilities, like Bone Storm, are going to be Shadow abilities now as well, which are going to proc a bunch of extra damage and corpse explosions and automatic corpse tendrils. It's a really good time, unless you're one of the monsters here in one of these dungeons. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the gear first. We're going to talk about the affixes, the aspects, and all that stuff. And we're going to talk about the abilities, of course. I'm going to show you the build in the ability tree. Then we'll talk about Paragon, and then finally we'll kind of wrap it up with a run through a dungeon. We're in a tier 46 right now, just kind of hanging out. You can definitely push more and higher with the gear that I have, and I'm certain, I think I've done a 55 or a 56 at the highest that I was kind of just comfortable to do. And even that went fairly swimmingly, not too much to talk about that with respect to anything bad happening. It was pretty good. But because my lucky hit is not super high, because you know, I'm not really completely min-maxed with this build, because I literally just made the transition last week from Bone Spear. Certainly, I do have to be a little bit careful not to push too hard, otherwise I might find myself in between the Blood Mist cooldown, and that might cause me to die, because some of these higher level dungeons, you definitely get one-shotted pretty easily. So, that being said, we'll talk about the gear first, the abilities, then the Paragon, and then we'll kind of do the dungeon run, kind of show you how the whole build works. Okay, so let's get started with the gear. Now, again, this isn't going to be like super endgame. I'm sure I'm going to be upgrading a lot of the stuff, but hey, this is what it is for now. So I have a 769 plus 25. These are all going to be upgraded 5 times. And we're going to start out with cooldown reduction. And I got to say that cooldown reduction is definitely one of the most important things here. The reason for that is because you want to work with the Decrepify effect, that lucky hit of 15%, whenever you hit enemies that have Decrepify, which we'll get to, which that can have a 15% chance to trigger the lucky hit. And if it resolves, then you basically get to reduce your cooldowns by 1 second, which is really nice. But further reducing your cooldowns is also very important, because you want to make sure that even if your lucky hit isn't as high as it should be, you are still in some way reducing your cooldowns as much as you can to get as close as pretty much 100 or 95% at the least uptime on your Blood Mist, which is going to be this thing down here, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So for the helmet here, we've got the cooldown reduction, we've got fire resistance, which I couldn't get rid of it. It was like I don't know what the other stat was that I rolled on, but I think the fire resistance should have been the thing that I rolled away, because any kind of resistance doesn't actually work right now properly in the game. So yeah, then we've got some max life, which is always kind of nice. It's not a lot, but it's something. And then we have 3% total armor, which is great. We are running the explosive mist aspect here, so Blood Mist will trigger a corpse explosion on nearby corpses, and when that happens, Blood Mist, or whenever Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 0.3 seconds. So you're starting to see a little bit of a pattern here with cooldown reduction, which is very important. Again, having a high uptime on the skill that literally makes you immune for 3 seconds, very important. It's crucial in this build. So we don't have a max roll here, but it's good enough for now. Now moving on to the next one here. This is 794 plus 25, so pretty good. Now, the strength is not ideal. I'd probably want to go for total armor here. We did end up rolling total armor, but it would have been nice to have maybe some additional damage reduction from enemies affected by Shadow over Time, for example. I think that would have been much better than the strength, but hey, we'll take whatever armor we can get as well. We do have 19.6% on both damage reduction from close and distant enemies, which is really, really good. So that was a really good roll here. And I'm not sure what we rolled away to get the 5.1% total armor, but that's also really, really good. The aspect here is the one, I don't know exactly what this one's called. Maybe you guys can help me down below, but it's the one that gives you a percentage of armor multiplicative increase in armor whenever you deal any damage for 4 seconds, stacking up to 30%. Again, that's multiplicative. That's nice. Don't crucify me for not having all of my gems either, because yeah, like I said, I've been kind of just trying to get gear as much as possible, and I've been replacing a lot of stuff regularly. So the fact that we've got even a max roll aspect here is kind of surprising to me. Kind of a nice thing to have that extra armor. Moving on, we've got Howl from Below. This is pretty much the only unique that you're going to absolutely rely on. This is 100% crucial to the build because it really helps to kind of push things along. It gives you lucky hit. It gives you corpse skill attack speed, which is really nice because it means that you get to basically proc your corpse explosions more often, and by so doing, you're doing more damage and more instances of periodic damage, and whenever that's happening, you've got chances to proc your lucky hits. So overall, this is really, really good, 25.5% on that. And then we have 2 lucky hit abilities here, 30.3 and 15% respectively to stun and fear. Not as great as something else that we could have had on a non-unique gloves, but to be honest with you, it's pretty good. I mean, especially when you're in my position, when you're not a level 100 yet, but you are, you do want to push, and maybe you're changing gear, you're changing builds, and you're kind of transitioning to the Blood Mist build. This definitely does help because you are effectively CCing stuff a little bit more often, especially once you get that lucky hit up. And the reason why this is important is not just for survivability, to get stuff kind of away from you as you're moving through things, because that's essentially what we're going to be doing, but also because you do have some instances of doing extra damage to crowd control enemies, or whether you get that on your gear, whether you get that in your Paragon, or perhaps even in the ability. I'm not sure if there's an ability that does that, but I'm sure there's something along those lines. I know you can get it in your Paragon trees. This is just another 2 pieces of the puzzle in terms of 2 different types of CCs. So when you stun, that's a CC. When you fear, that's a CC. When you slow, that's also a CC. Stunning is also a CC. And so being able to have a vast sort of arsenal of different types of crowd control available to you, most of them are going to be automatic, which is really nice too. You're basically giving yourself the opportunity to do a lot more damage, and exponentially more so. So that's great. Now this is going to also have an effect on the corpse explosion here. So instead of detonating immediately, it's going to create a volatile skeleton that's going to charge at a random enemy and explode, and it's also going to increase our corpse explosion damage by 30%. Again, that's multiplicative, and that is a fairly low roll on these gloves, but they are somewhat easy to find. So if you keep farming your nightmares, eventually you will find them. We're going to move on to pants here, and the pants, they're really not that good, 662, but they do have some decent affixes on them. We do have, when injured, your potions also grant 45% movement speed for 2 seconds, and I mean, that's good. We could have probably gotten something else that was a little bit better, but the movement speed is pretty good because Necromancer is known to be probably one of the more sluggish classes, or probably the most sluggish class in all of Diablo 4, and so for that reason we do want to make sure that we look at some affixes here that are going to give us basically a little bit of movement speed in various different situations. On this one, we've got 14.6% damage reduction from close enemies, 14.6% from distant enemies, a bit of a pattern here, which is kind of nice. We do have some dodge as well. And then we have a 5.2% damage reduction from enemies that are affected by Shadow over Time effects. So that's pretty good too. That is the lowest roll we could have possibly gotten on that. The 12.5% would have been a lot nicer, but again, beggars can't exactly be choosers in this particular case, so we'll take what we can get. Each time the Bone Storm damages an enemy, you get a barrier that will be 5% of your base life for 10 seconds. This is really, really good because we are basically constantly going to be hitting stuff, and we're looking at a pretty high uptime. I'd say about 85 to 90% uptime right now, around there, for me at least. on Bone Storm, which is good. So what I love about Bone Storm, we'll talk about this in the abilities later. This is our ultimate skill, and it's just really amazing for doing a ton of damage, and also for helping you to survive as well, because not only does it give you a barrier, but it's also giving you 15% DR damage reduction, which is also nice, and that I'm sure is going to be scaling off your other damage reduction as well, so that's very good to have. Moving on, Penitent Greaves. Now, you don't really need these. I've just got these because they were kind of the best option that I had, and I couldn't find any other boots. So if you've got better boots, that's fine. Just make sure that you have really good movement speed roll on them, because again, we want to make sure that we are motoring. We don't want to hang around. We want to fart out as much shadow damage as we can, and then just move right along. Evade grants 75% speed for 1 second. That's also quite nice. Kind of get out of dodge and then kind of run away. With the Penitent Greaves, that's nice too, because we chill the ground, and then that chills the enemies, and then we do 10% multiplicative more damage to chilled enemies. On the theme of crowd control, that is definitely going to help us out there. Now, 24.8% movement speed is absolutely nuts. Not the top roll, but pretty damn close. 17.5% crowd control reduction. Again, not the top roll, but pretty close there. And 18.9% slow duration reduction. That's not bad. The reason why it's not great, though, is because, again, we're looking for pretty high uptime on the mist, thereby coming up with Infinimist as the name for this build. Of course, I didn't coin that, but in any case, we're looking for the mist to be pretty much up as often as we can get it. So the slow reduction, it's okay when the mist is on cooldown, but otherwise not particularly helpful. And then we have 59.8% cold reduction, or cold resistance rather, which actually would be really, really nice for all those cold enchanted bastards out there. But as far as I know, and again, through my testing and testing with friends and stuff like that, we've noticed that, yeah, the resistances are actually really not working properly in the game right now. So it is what it is. Again, we leave a chilled sort of path behind us so that if enemies touch that, they start to get chilled. And then we do 10% more damage multiplicatively to them. Again, not the best, in terms of the different aspects that we could have on here, but that's actually not too bad. And again, this was the best pair of boots that I could find, so we'll just go ahead and move on. Now, for your weapon, you definitely want a wand, and the reason for that is because we have a 15% lucky hit chance as sort of the main ability here on the wand, and increasing that lucky hit is very, very important. If I look in here and we scroll all the way down, you can see that our lucky hit chance is 38.1%. So ideally, yeah, you want to be around 40% plus. 50 plus is really, really good. But 38, it's not too bad. If you're hovering around that 40%, it's a good start. But again, you want to start looking for those rolls on your gear for lucky hit, because that's really going to help to make your build kind of pop into beast mode, so to speak, and it's gonna really bring it online. So that'll be really good to have that. Right. So let's go ahead and look at the wand here. 1200-ish DPS. That's not too bad, but the affixes are kind of interesting here. 16.5% to damage to affected by shadow over time, so that's nice. 51.5% damage to distant enemies. That's actually, or rather, sorry, that's 31%. Whew, okay. I thought I got a really good roll here. 31.5% to distant enemies, and that's not bad because, again, like I said, the playstyle here, we're going to be pushing, and so we don't mind when we're further away that our enemies are still taking that shadow damage and taking even more of it. 14.3 damage over time. Again, that's great because that's the main way that we do damage, and 21% vulnerable damage because we have various ways, including corpse tendrils as well as bone prison, to make things vulnerable, and so that's just an extra little buff. Now, as for the aspect here, we're going to take the one that gives Bloodstorm and Bone Storm and Blood Wave. Getting my merge mixed up there. Also makes them darkness skills, and they deal shadow damage and gain additional abilities. Now, of course, Blood Wave, we don't have to really worry about it, but the Bone Storm, enemies damaged by Bone Storm will take an additional 1878 damage. The roll on that's pretty good, and that'll be shadow damage over 2 seconds. So again, periodic damage is kind of the key. Going to move on to the Blighted Choker here. Again, everything's fully upgraded. This one's 806, which is not bad. We have a pretty high chance of damage reduction while injured, so 39.5, that's pretty good. 7.7% cooldown reduction. Again, would have been nice if it was 10, but hey, again, beggars can't really be choosers. 22.5% darkness skill damage, which is nice, and 7.4% strength. Again, not the craziest one out there that we could have gotten, but not bad. It gives us armor. And for the aspect here, we've got the Blighted aspect, so that's going to allow us to deal 138%, again, multiplicative, increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times. And that's going to happen pretty much all the time because we're constantly going to be spewing out shadow damage on the floor with all of the corpse explosions that we've got. Now, I've got a Varshan's Wrathful Heart here, which is actually the Barber Heart, but it's not called the Barber Heart, even though it does exactly what the Barber Heart does. This one is basically going to take critical strikes and all damage thereafter for 3 seconds in this case, so kind of a mid-range roll. And it's going to multiply that damage by 14% per second, and then it's going to explode and do that damage to all the enemies in the area, and that is of course per enemy. So if we are doing a bunch of AoE damage and all maybe 10 enemies, let's say, or 20 enemies in the area are soaking that up, after 3 seconds they're all going to explode for a ton of damage, hurting each other, and it's just going to be a great time for us. So that is good. If you can get a barber, get a barber. Moving on, we're going to look at the rings next, and so this first ring, 772, not bad. Again, upgraded all the way. Resistances, meh, doesn't really matter right now. 19.5% shadow damage, that's pretty good. 25.5 damage to close enemies, again, quite good. That's going to buff our initial damage, although not as great as distant because we are going to be moving away from stuff. But from those times where we have to kind of hang around for a little bit of a bigger pack to drop some more corpse explosions, that's going to work out pretty well. 18% damage over time, 2.7% critical strike chance. Again, I kind of had to change one of the much worse stats there. That's why I kept the 2.7% crit chance. The crit chance is nice to have. The crit damage is nice to have. But it's not going to be as critical in this build as for the Bone Spear build, which is definitely super crit heavy. I remember when I was doing that, I was at about 40+% unbuffed, and then probably about 85% buffed crit chance, which is, yeah, pretty good. The aspect for this, we're going to be using Blood Mist, leaves a trail that lasts for 4 seconds, deals 1094. Not the best roll, but again, we're kind of switching gear pretty quickly these days, so I'm sure we'll replace this eventually. Shadow damage per second to enemies who stand in it. Your movement speed is no longer reduced while in Blood Mist. And that is actually really, really important because there was a movement speed penalty when you're in Blood Mist, and having this removed in addition to doing additional damage is just, that's just really nice to have. For our Vicious Heart here, walking near a corpse automatically activates an equipped corpse skill every second, dealing 21% reduced damage. This is going to be the Sacrilegious Heart. Very nice. I very much recommend this, and that's definitely going to be helping us to do more damage. I believe the corpse tendrils are only going to be happening every 3 seconds, and then the corpse explosion every 1 second. Then it is going to go left to right, and if you do have minions, then that is going to also resummon your minions, from what I understand. But I from my testing, it seems like it favors the skeletons a bit more. I'm not sure how it interfaces with the golems, but in any case, I'm sure we'll find out. But that being said, yeah, very, very nice to have. And we'll move on to the next ring here. For the last ring here, we are at 786, so pretty good. Again, resistances are kind of meh. We're starting out with 5.1% lucky hit chance. That is very good. It was nice to roll into that. 15.8% damage over time, 29.2 damage to close enemies, and a little bit of max life for a little bit better sustain. Now we are using another Shadow Blight ability here. I don't know exactly what this one's called, but each time Shadow Blight key passive deals damage to enemies, it increases the next Shadow Blight damage within 10 seconds by 29%. Again, not the best roll here, but it is what it is, stacking up to 5 times. So again, we're going to be hitting everything with Shadow Blight, which is going to be just stacking even more and more and more and more damage multiplicatively, and it's just going to be pretty awesome. We have a Brutal Heart here. This is going to be the Heart of the Decrepit Aura. When at least one enemy are near you, gain an aura that automatically curses surrounding enemies with Decrepify for 19 seconds. This is good. We actually got a pretty good roll on this, And yeah, this is really good because it helps to slow enemies and ultimately helps you to do some more damage to them and reduce cooldowns especially. So that is very, very nice. And you don't actually have to have this on your bar because, as you can see, I don't have it on mine. And yeah, that'll just happen automatically. Now, we did take it in the abilities, but I'll show that to you later once we kind of get to it. Now, for this, I do have a focus. Now, you can have a shield here if you'd like, but I took the focus because I really wanted that 10.3% cooldown reduction. Of course, the shield can give you a little bit more tankiness, but it will also result in lower DPS, so keep that in mind. 21% barrier generation, not too bad. Lucky hit, up to 24% chance to slow. So again, we're looking at another CC that's working off a lucky hit chance. 7.1% cooldown reduction and 6.9% lucky hit chance again. So definitely nice to have that lucky hit. Now, for the aspect, we are running the Osseous Gale on this one. The Bone Storm consumes up to 8 corpses to increase its duration by up to 10 seconds. And we got a max roll on that too, which is absolutely awesome. And this one, I would say it's not a must, but I mean, it's pretty damn close. So you definitely should be running Osseous Gale. It's really, really good. Right, so that wraps up the gear. Let's have a look at the abilities. All right, so we're in the ability tree here. We've got everything spent. So let me just show you how I got everything set up. We've got Reap here to start, and actually before I start, I should just say that this is not going to be the path that you want to take 1 to 50. If you want that info, I can kind of maybe guide you through it or give you some more info in another video or on Discord. So do check out the description and join us on Discord there if you need some help. But this is going to be pretty much when you're, maxed out on your points. So I think that's level 50, and you've got, all the extra ability points from your renown. And so we're just going to kind of go into what it will look like when you're maxed out and just kind of where to put all your points, okay? So this is not going to be necessarily a path of what you should take first when you're leveling up. This is assuming you've got a level 50 plus character and you're looking just to get into this build. So we're going to start off with Reap. Reap is good early on because it helps you to make a corpse with the Acolyte's Reap. So that's really nice. That can happen every 4 seconds, and that will help you to make more corpses in the absence of the next thing that we're going to take, which is going to be Hewed Flesh, which, again, lucky hit, as you can see, no surprise there. It's a bit of a theme happening here in this build, and that is going to help us to create corpses just by doing damage to stuff, which is good. Moving along, we've got Blood Mist. We're 5 out of 5 on this. Of course, you can have extra from your gear. If you happen to have that, that's great. If you don't, that's fine. We're going to go with Enhanced Blood Mist, which is really kind of useless at this point, especially with how low of a chance you have to overpower. But we need to take it in order to get to Ghastly Blood Mist, which is going to allow us to make a corpse every second that we're using it. So we're going to get 3 corpses in total because Blood Mist lasts for 3 seconds. Moving on, we're going to take 4 out of 5 Corpse Explosion, and then we're going to augment it by going Enhanced, which is going to increase the radius, and then the Blighted Corpse Explosion, which is going to do the AoE for us instead of just the explosion, and ultimately that's also going to do more damage, and because it's Shadow, we are buffing that with all of our Shadow damage buffs as well. Now, this is where things get a little bit different. Some of the builds online kind of deviate a little bit here and don't take the Bone Prison. I like the Bone Prison because if I'm in a situation where I don't have 100% uptime on my Blood Mist, I want to be able to survive, and one of the best ways to do so is to be able to segregate enemies away from you in order to be able to wait that extra second or two to get that Blood Mist up or the Bone Storm up that you need to create your barrier so that you can continue to move through enemies. So we're going to go ahead and take 1 point in that. That's all you need. Enhanced Bone Prison. If an enemy is trapped by Bone Prison, gain 25 Essence. This doesn't really matter because this build doesn't really take advantage of Essence. But, again, we kind of need to do it in order to get to the Ghastly Bone Prison, which is going to make our enemies vulnerable, which again is really, really nice. So if you're not using this just to CC enemies, at least you can also use them just to make them vulnerable. So if you're fighting a pack that's a little bit more difficult, you throw in a Bone Prison there. That'll keep you a little bit safer in between cooldowns. And of course, you're also going to be making stuff vulnerable, which is really good. Grim Harvest is kind of poo-poo, but we do have to take it because we want to get to Fueled by Death, which is going to give us a 9% multiplicative increase of damage for 6 seconds after we consume a corpse, which we're going to do every single second that we're in a dungeon. Moving on to curses, we have Amplified Damage, 12% increase multiplicative damage to cursed enemies, and because we have that Decrepify, I mean, I know we do have it here, But because we have that automatic Decrepify aura from the heart of the Decrepit aura, basically that is going to be 12% increased multiplicative damage to everything that we touch, which is fantastic. Now, why would we need to take the Decrepify skill here if it's automatically cast as an aura for us using that heart? Well, the reason for that is because we want to reduce our cooldowns, and the only reason to the only way that we can do that is by taking 1 point in Decrepify here. You're going to keep this off your bar. You don't need to put it on your bar in order for the heart to work of the Decrepit aura. We're going to take an enhanced Decrepify. That's going to be another lucky hit. I guess you can see the pattern here forming. Enemies hit while affected with Decrepify have up to a 10% chance to be stunned for 2.33 seconds. So that's pretty cool. We don't really play around this particular ability, but again, we need to take it in order to get to Abhorrent Decrepify, which again, lucky hit. Enemies hit while afflicted by Decrepify have up to a 15% chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1 second. That is really, really good. And this is the main way that we're going to be keeping our Bone Storm and our Blood Mist and a bunch of other stuff pretty much off of cooldown as well. I mean, as much as we can right now, but once we're fully min-maxed out, that's pretty much going to be 100% uptime on both of those abilities, which is great. Coming down to our Corpse and Macabre abilities, we're going to go to Corpse Tendrils. Again, we want to have that for being able to have it auto-cast, but also it's a nice CC to have. And we are only going to put 1 point in that. Then we're going to go to Enhanced. That is going to slow for 50% before they get grasped, which again is another type of CC, which means probably more damage for us. And then, of course, Plagued Corpse Tendrils is a big one. Enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils are vulnerable for 3 seconds. They probably won't be alive for much more than that, so that's actually perfect timing. Going to move over to some of these shadow passives. Reaper's Pursuit is the first one. We're going to get a 15% additive increase in speed whenever we damage stuff with darkness skills, which is pretty much going to be the majority of our stuff. We're going to move over to Gloom. When you damage enemies with darkness skills, they take 6% multiplicative increased shadow damage from you and your minions for 2 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. That's pretty nice. Next, we're going to go to Terror, and that is going to give our darkness skills 9%, again, multiplicative bonus damage to enemies who are slowed, and 9% multiplicative damage bonus to enemies who are stunned or immobilized. This is, again, very good because we are immobilizing them by slowing them. We are stunning them by using Corpse Tendrils on them, and all those things happen automatically, but you can trigger them manually as well, which is nice. These bonuses stack and apply to shadow damage dealt by your minions too. So if you're running a sort of a hybrid build with shadow over time as well as some minions, which those builds are pretty popular out there these days, then this is actually going to be pretty helpful for you as well. Now we're going to put 1 point into Crippling Darkness. This again, lucky hit. Darkness skills will have a 15% chance to stun for 1.17 seconds. And again, this is just a little bit of survivability, but it's just kind of a nice utility spell to have happen pretty much automatically for us. Now, on our ultimate here, we're going to go with Standalone, and I'm going to explain kind of the relationship between this and the Golem later, and we do have an option to remove the Golem if you so wish, but Standalone is going to increase damage reduction by 18%, reduced by 2% for each active minion, so technically 16% is what we're getting when we have the Golem out, and then we're going to go 3 out of 3 in Memento Mori, which is sacrificing both skeletal mages and warriors. That those sacrifice bonuses are going to be increased by 60%, and that we are taking full advantage of. Finally, for our ultimate, we're going to go with Bone Storm. This is a fantastic offensive and defensive skill. It's going to do a ton of damage over time, and now it's also, because of our aspect, going to be doing shadow damage, which again, we are buffing quite a bit. Our damage reduction is also increased by 15% while it's active, and our critical strike chance is increased by 20% additive rather, when Bone Storm is active as well. So that's why we are going to be taking both the Prime and Supreme Bone Storm. And finally, at the very end here, we're going to be taking Shadow Blight. Shadow damage inflicts, or infects rather, enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions deal 10% multiplicative bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. Every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions while they are affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional 2100 to 2600 shadow damage. So that is really, really nice. So let's go ahead and have a look at the Paragon here. I'm not going to spend too much time on here. We've got the starter board here. And you can just basically pause the video here wherever you'd like. I'll kind of stop for a few seconds when we move to each board so you can see what everything looks like. We are going to be taking Amplify here. And that's going to grant us 120% bonus to all magic nodes, which is nice. And enemies affected by curse skills take 10% increased damage. That's multiplicative from you and your minions. And we have a little bonus down there as well. So that is definitely nice. We've got that one pretty much at minimum level 15. That's why we've got a nice big red area here. It might be a little smaller for you if you don't have this upgraded all the way. The next one, you're going to be taking the Wither board. I'll let you kind of read that for a second there. That just basically makes your shadow damage much, much better. And then for your glyph, you're going to be getting the Darkness glyph. And that, again, going to be augmenting your shadow damage. So for now, we have 29.9%. May actually increase once we level that up a little bit. Again, I'm kind of in the progress of doing this. I have mostly all new glyphs because I wasn't, of course, using these when I was on Bone Spear. So yeah, that's kind of what you're doing for your second board. And you do just want to make sure that you have it oriented like this. You've got your glyph socket up here, which, yeah, it is a little bit far away. But you do also get access to your legendary nice and early. And also you do your exit cost here for the board on the top and the right is definitely going to be a lot less than if you had gone this way. So this is kind of why we're going this way. On the right here, we have the Flesh Eater board. So again, we're going to be exploding a ton of corpses, so you want to take advantage of that. And then, of course, for the glyph, we are going to be using the Control glyph. Now, this one's maxed out for me. It's at 21 because I was using this pretty much as my main glyph when I was Bone Storm, or Bone Spear, rather. So that's why it's nice and big here. But yeah, this is going to give us a ton of damage to crowd control enemies. And remember how I was talking about this before. If we stun, slow, chill, all those things are crowd control. And so that is a huge, huge damage increase to those enemies, which is really, really good. We do also have a flat damage buff here. You and your minions deal 10% increased damage to slowed or chilled enemies. Chilled is actually kind of nice because you got the Penitent Greaves there, so that kind of works out. 20% multiplicative increased damage to stunned or frozen enemies. We're not really freezing guys here unless they stay on the chill that our Penitent Greaves leave for too long. They might get frozen there, but they'll probably be dead long before they're frozen. Now, moving up, now again, I haven't really done all of the nodes that I need to here because I'm still only 87, but we're going to go to Scent of Death here. And again, we are going to be basically just buffing our damage as much as we possibly can. For our glyph, we're going to go with Scourge. That's just going to give us shadow over time, which is, of course, the kind of damage that we are doing. So there you go. That is going to be your Paragon board. All right, so let's quickly have a look at Book of the Dead here. We're going to look at our various minions here. 2 of them we're going to be sacrificing. The 3rd we're going to keep around, but you can, of course, change this to suit your playstyle. Now, for the warriors here, we're going to go ahead and pick Reapers, and we're going to sacrifice them to get 15% multiplicative increased shadow damage. But, of course, we can no longer summon our Reapers, so that's fine. And for our Skeletal Mages, we're going to go Skeletal Mages Cold, and we're going to sacrifice those for 15%. Again, multiplicative increased to vulnerable enemies, which, again, we're going to make our enemies vulnerable quite often, so that is definitely going to be a nice little boost in power. And then this is where it's kind of really going to be up to you. Now, you can choose to sacrifice your Golem, and if you're going to do that, I would do this last one here. So I would pick the Iron Golem, and I would sacrifice this one to deal 30% multiplicable increase in critical strike damage. But again, because my crit strike chance is not particularly high and my gear is not really fully min-maxed out to what I want it to be, I do want that little extra bit of survivability. And so for that reason, I chose the Blood Golem. Your Blood Golem absorbs 15% of the damage that you would take, but because of the way that this kind of works and how it scales off other damage reduction stats, it's actually going to be closer to 35 to 40%. So that's going to be really, really nice. Even if it was just a flat 15% though, that would still be a really nice flat damage reduction buff to take. And for now, at least, that's kind of what I'm going with. Eventually, I'm probably going to sacrifice the Iron Golem, though, to do a little bit more crit damage, but that's probably going to be in the future once we get a bit more crit chance on board, which, again, we're not really predominantly looking for. It is a nice to have, but is definitely not critical like it is in the Bone Spear build. Alright, everybody, that's going to do it for me. Appreciate you watching. As you can see, that was a pretty nice build. There's a lot of defensive abilities there, a lot of versatility, and of course, a good amount of damage as well. So if you found that helpful, make sure to drop a like. Let me know down in the comments as well. If I have time, I'll try to make more of these. In the meantime, make sure to become a subscriber. Come and join us on Discord. Links in the description, whether you just need some help or want to chat. And until next time, happy gaming.